Swing and a drive.
Welcome to Red, White, and Blue Jays, the podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK, a group connecting Blue Jays fans around the UK and beyond, and telling their story. And now, here's the host of Red, White, and Blue Jays, Steve Hunter.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Red, White and Blue Jays. We've got some live baseball back. Spring training has officially kicked off. First game was yesterday. Can't wait to start to watch real baseball again. What a long break we've had, but it is definitely back up and running. The Jays have had a mega week in terms of their signings, and we'll get to chat a little bit about that over the coming episodes. But today I had the joy of catching up with Bob Ballard. Now, you will know Bob. I'm absolutely convinced from many of the commentaries that he's done. And it was just a real thrill to hear a little bit about his career and to hear about his passion for the Jays and how that all first started. So enjoy this one with Bob Ballard.
The podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK. You're listening to Red, White, and Blue Jays.
Hey guys, welcome to Red, White and Blue Jays, and a very warm welcome to Bob Ballard. Bob, great to have you on.
Steve, great to be on. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's absolute pleasure, sir. We've got so much to talk about. Obviously, at the point of recording, we've had a mega week in terms of the Jays and what's happened in their world, and we'll talk a little bit about the signings and our sort of thoughts towards this season. Obviously, spring training's already kicked off as well. So, yeah, loads of things happening in Jays world. But I think just in terms of a bit of an introduction, it'd be great to just get a little bit about you. I've done an introduction in terms of you and a little bit about your career. But just if we can rewind the clock, just tell us how you first sort of came into broadcasting and your passion for commentating and so on. Where did that all start?
Well, my passion for commentating came a bit later on, but my passion for music has been there since I was very young. And that was kind of what led me into broadcasting eventually anyway, is when I left school, there weren't any openings in broadcasting straight off. So I had to work out a plan or a path to get into broadcasting. And I thought the best way probably would be to work in the music industry because it's something that interests me. And so I worked in that for about 5 years, working on the basis that I probably would, during the course of working in the music industry, come across people who worked in broadcasting. That's exactly what happened, because I was doing probably one of the worst jobs I've ever had to do was plugging. That is going around the radio stations and trying to get them to play your music, which is, if you work at a big record company, sometimes it's not so bad. But if you're working at a small one and you're battling with the big boys, it's a little unfulfilling, shall we say. The good thing that came out of that, the positive thing that came out of that from my point of view, was I did meet somebody at Radio Medway, as they were then, Radio Kent as they were latterly, who said, "Oh, you've obviously got an interest in radio." And I said, "Yes, that's obviously eventually what I want to get into." So I started to work on a program on Radio Medway, as it was then, called Out and About, a Saturday afternoon program, presented by Kevin Geary, who you may know sadly died a couple of years ago, was my producer at Radio Kent. And so I just did this kind of behind the scenes stuff for a little while. And then one Saturday afternoon, there was no sport on. It was chucking down with snow. And an hour before transmission, he said to me, "How do you fancy doing the program?" I went, "You are kidding me, aren't you?" He said, No, I don't fancy doing it today. Why don't you do it?" It's a 3-hour program. I'd never done a 3-hour program on proper radio before. I'd done hospital radio, but I'd never done something that's going out to one of the biggest counties in the whole of the UK. And that was kind of it. That was my launch pad, if you like. And in a way, I kind of never looked back from that, because having done that program, he said, "Well, yeah, you did pretty well. You can do it from now on." And I did for the next 5.5 years.
That's extraordinary. I mean, so when you said you had a passion for broadcasting, did you have like a school radio station or anything like that? Where did that sort of DNA, if you like, in you to do broadcasting? Where did that actually kick in?
I'll tell you what, I had a radio station that I used to run from my bedroom. I invented a radio station that should broadcast from train stations, right? It didn't obviously exist, but in my world, in my imagination, I actually had this radio station that would broadcast from train stations, right? So they play music and then they do all the announcements and stuff like that. a version of that kind of happened later on. Funny enough, I may be slightly ahead of the curve on that, but I kind of created my own radio station from my bedroom. Then I worked in hospital radio when I was 16. Literally 2 days after my 16th birthday, I started working at Radio Hillingdon in West London. So that was kind of how I learnt to do radio and make all my mistakes at that level. And that's what led me eventually to working into radio proper, so 7 years later, 6-7 years later.
And I think often, you know, the things that we do in adult life come from those sort of moments, don't they, in childhood and dreaming, and for you to actually fulfill that passion that you had as a young age. So what would have been your music genre if you'd you know, broken through in terms of just pure music? Where would you have liked to have sat?
Well, my musical taste is so wide and so varied. I mean, I have a ridiculously extensive CD collection, which basically eats me out of house and home these days, because I always want to try and complete stuff. So I go, well, I haven't got that track, I need to get that track, and I'm always looking for stuff. So I've probably got about 20,000 CDs, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
In my collection. Yeah. That's how ridiculous my CD collection is. So I think if I was to have to choose between music and sport, music would come first, definitely. They run each other quite close, but music would get the priority, would get the nod on that.
So where are you with streaming platforms and all that sort of stuff?
I don't like it.
You don't?
No, I like physical music. I like buying it. So before CDs, I used to buy albums. I'm not really into buying albums these days, even though I have a deck, because they just take up too much room, basically. Yeah. I mean, CDs take up enough room as it is. But whilst I like, and always used to like, vinyl and having the proper stuff, just takes up too much room. But I know I'm not a streaming person at all. I would far rather seek out, if I can, get the physical version and you know, put it on my laptop if needs be. But I always would rather have the physical version to hand every time.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated with this sort of whole CD versus, you know, Spotify or Apple or whatever, in terms of, you know, can you really tell the difference between the music quality of something that's being streamed and maybe just because my ears aren't attuned perhaps in the same way somebody like you would be, but would you be able to pick out the difference between the two?
I can certainly tell the difference between vinyl and CD. If you have a quality vinyl compared to CD, then there is a difference. I'm a big Motown fan. I went to Motown Museum a few years ago, which is one of the greatest things I've ever done. And I can tell the difference between Motown music on vinyl and Motown music on CD, because there's a depth and a warmth to that there isn't on CD, because everything gets compressed, doesn't it? When it becomes digitized, everything kind of gets moved into the middle. Whereas with vinyl, you get the whole expanse and the whole wide range of it. So I can always tell quite easily the difference between a vinyl and CD. But as I say, because of sheer space size and everything else these days, CDs is more practical in lots of ways.
Yeah, brilliant. So moving into sport, then, what was the first thing that you sort of said you were thrown into the deep end? How did that go? I mean, what was the emotion like, knowing that you're speaking to lots of people who are listening in? I mean, this is hard enough doing this with you, quite frankly, and at least I can listen to it and edit it out when I make mistakes. But what's it like in the live world?
Well, but the essence of radio should be that you are broadcasting to one person. Now, you and I hopefully going to get loads of people hearing this, but we should be thinking about maybe just one person listening to it. We should be aiming at one person. And that's the whole nature of what radio is about, is potentially you've got hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people listening to you. But you don't think of that. You think of the one person. When I used to do drive time, I think of the guy in his car, or I think of somebody preparing the dinner in the kitchen. You don't actually think about, could we broadcast to all these people? When I did, I know we're jumping forward a bit here, but when I did the Tom Daley bronze medal in London at 2012 Olympics, we got viewing figures of 17.5 million people. Now, I cannot even think about that. I work at Wembley, which holds 90,000 people. So that is Wembley, what is that, 24 times over or something like that, something ridiculous like that. You don't think about that. If you did think about that when you're doing broadcast, you never do it, because it's just out of your mindset completely. So you have to think about, when you're broadcasting television, radio, whatever it is, you are broadcasting to one person. You have an idea who that person might be. Might be a friend, might be somebody that you visualize being involved in listening to your program at that time. But you can't physically or mentally ever consider the possibility of broadcasting to thousands, hundreds, millions, whatever it might be, because otherwise you'd never do the job. You just wouldn't.
Sure. So take us back then to your first sporting experience. What was that? Where was that? Who was that? Can you remember the score?
Yeah. Well, we talk about Jays, or we talk about anything?
No. About in terms of your commentating. What was?
Well, commentating that came from Radio Kent as well, and that was ice hockey because I'd done, like a lot of us do when we're younger, dummy commentaries in front of a television, of football commentaries and things like that. The first thing I'd done for real was ice hockey, and the reason for that was I was working at Radio Kent, as I mentioned. They had an ice hockey team that did pretty well in its first season. They were called the Medway Bears out of Gillingham, and they made the playoffs. So because sport was big, but not that big in Kent. We had Gillingham, we had Maidstone in terms of football, cricket in the summer, but not much else. So this is quite a big thing for Radio Kent. And they went, we've Medway Bears have reached the place we need to do commentary. And I went, who's going to do it? Because I'm the reporter. I followed them home and away, but I've never done ice hockey commentary. They said, well, now's as good a time to do it. Now's as good a time to learn and to actually get involved in it. So I did. So I'm not sure how well I did. Probably not that well, to be absolutely honest, because it's the first thing I've ever done. And also, I think you would know, and I think most people watching this would know, ice hockey is one of the most difficult games to commentate on, especially on the radio, even more so on the radio as television, because the speed of it, even at that level, which is not the highest level, not NHL level, of course, but even at that level, the puck's moving so quickly, player identification needs to be spot on, that kind of stuff. So if ever there was a difficult sport, or the most difficult sport potentially to do as your first commentary, it would be ice hockey.
Yeah.
But it was a good grounding. It was a good lesson for me to learn how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago when we were over in Toronto with our kids, we went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and in there they've got a whole load of different events that you can do with the family and stuff, and shoot pucks at goalkeepers and try and save them and all that sort of stuff. But one of the things they have is this little sports center studio where they have a screen with a hockey game on it, and they record you and trying to do the commentary of the game. And quite frankly, after about 10 seconds, I was about 5 seconds behind the play, even just trying to get my words out, and the puck is moving around so quickly. I mean, these guys who do it professionally, game out, the concentration levels must be extraordinary.
Well, and also, I mean, people who do football commentary, you've got 11 players out there. Ice hockey, you've got 23 potentially, all changing on the fly. So whilst you'll have 5 on the ice, and you'll get another 5 on the ice, and another 5 comes to the ice. You don't have that consistency that you have in other sports. So it's changing all the time. So what you'll get used to a pattern within a game, then suddenly it will change again because there's different players out on the ice. So it really does completely test the powers of observation and concentration. You're quite right in that respect. Yeah.
So what event would you look back over your career in terms of sporting event this is that you enjoyed commentating at the most? Where would that sit?
I think it probably would be 2012 Paralympics, actually, not the Olympics so much, because I was covering the swimming and the diving. Okay, we did all right in the diving. But the Paralympics 2012 was such a great atmosphere because it was something that we embraced and we endorsed. The swimming that I was covering, that venue was filled every night. People were quite knowledgeable. They really appreciated it. It did help that we did very well as well. But I just think it was one of those occasions where, as a Londoner, somebody who's born and bred here and lived most of my life here, to have an Olympic Games in my city, and for it to go as well as it did, and then the Paralympics off the back of it, it was a great 4 or 5 weeks, which I don't think will ever be replicated. No.
Were you doing the swimming at the Paralympics as well?
Yes, I was,
yeah. I mean, they were extraordinary events, weren't they? And I think all of us, at the time we were living in Weymouth, so we saw a lot of the sailing events just off the shoreline from the beach. And I think all of us will remember moments through that Olympic Games that will stand out the test of time, and I think particularly being involved. Did you get to the opening ceremonies and all that sort of stuff? Did you get that privilege as commentators?
No, I didn't. I watched it. I watched it because the thing is, there's so many people, especially with that games in particular. When you work out, I was working for the BBC, and the BBC made it their mission, their duty, to cover every single event that was there. So event that you would normally see, like handball, for example, there are people doing that. There are people, obviously, in water polo, which is an event I've covered a bit. But there's obviously was so many people within the BBC team, we couldn't all go to the opening ceremony or the closing ceremony. So I watched the opening ceremony on TV, absolutely gobsmacked at what they did there. And again, I was very sad with the closing ceremony, which, is kind of what we built up to over 7 years, looking forward to it so much, and it had gone so well. And then, oh, that was it. It's all over now. Yeah. But it was terrific, and I feel sorry for those who missed out on that, who didn't actually experience it, because, all right, we might get it again. There's talk we might get it again in 2036 potentially, but I don't think anything's quite going to capture the mood or the excitement and the feel of how London was in 2012, to be honest.
Yeah. And there was a bit of skepticism, wasn't there, actually leading up to the games initially? Lots. Poor old Sebco was really having to do a hard sell for everybody to say this is a good thing. But actually, by the time the games happened, the country. Well,
I think a lot of people were looking for it to fail. I think some people went, well, we're spending a lot of money on something like this. Why are we spending money on this? Well, we're going to be spending money on other things. The tube system is going to break down. Security is going to be terrible. We had all those things in the lead up to it. There was a bit of a security problem just before. That was resolved pretty quickly. Tubes ran like a dream. I wish they ran like that on a weekly basis in London now. But for the duration of both the Olympics and the Paralympics, tube trains, all the overground, all the TfL trains in London ran like clockwork. And what was so good about it, hopefully I'll never experience a war, and hopefully you won't either, but it had a kind of wartime feel about it. People were talking to each other. People don't talk to each other on the tube. They just don't. And people say, where have you been today? What have you seen? That's the camaraderie that was engendered through that 2 to 4 weeks was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny, in Weymouth, we had buses galore. I've never seen so many buses. And unfortunately, I think it sort of had a slightly different response.
Do you not have buses in Weymouth then or something? Or?
Well, no, they do, but there were literally thousands of these buses, because I think they were anticipating, because the roads into Weymouth, I don't know if you've ever been there, it's a little bit of a peninsula town as it goes out onto Portland. So you don't tend to go to Weymouth unless you're absolutely going there. And so they put all these buses on up into Dorchester, which is north of Weymouth. And there were signs literally miles and miles away saying, please avoid the area. It's going to be gridlocked, all this sort of thing. And I think conversely, it sort of had a flip-flop effect on the town, in that not a lot of people, or not to the thousands and thousands of people they were expecting to come, came. And so we had all these empty buses running around for a while. But I have to say, what we got to on the beach was brilliant, and we absolutely loved every minute. We sat on the sand, the sun was shining. I remember watching Andy Murray winning his gold medal on the big screen. It's just, and being out on the rocks when Ben Ainsley came through and won his gold, and just the joy and the excitement of being around an event like that and that's the beauty of sport. That's what we.
Well, it is that is something that sport
we love it.
Can do that nothing else can do. In the same way. Now, as you know, I'm a West Ham fan. We're talking just after we'd beaten Sevilla in the Europa League. I wasn't there on Thursday night, sadly. I couldn't get there. But just watching on TV, all the feedback I have from people I know who were there, now the prospect of making it through to the semi-finals potentially, sport kind of brings a lot of people together. And at times where there's a lot of negative stuff around and really bad news, sport does something that nothing else seems to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you mentioned the Hammers, which I was going to speak about, because obviously a couple of years ago there was an event at your home ground in terms of the London series, and we are here to talk about baseball. So let's just finish this one off. So 2019 Yankees Red Sox, London Stadium looked completely different. Did you go?
Yes. I did go. I think it's basically because I have no interest in either team. I have a loathing of one of those teams in particular.
Let me have a guess.
I thought, go on.
Yeah, well, they might have a few stripes on their uniform.
Yeah, they might just have that. And also, what also gets me, the amount of people who wear their caps, well, I'm sure they have absolutely no connection with the Yankees at all in London. I see the amount of New York Yankees caps in London drives me to distraction. I'm thinking, I bet you have no real affiliation with that team. It's just because you think it looks cool. So no, and I'm still hoping that if baseball does come back to London Stadium, the Blue Jays get a look in at some point. Especially when we win the World Series this year, we'll be right up there, won't we?
Yeah, but that would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, I did go to the game, or the Saturday game. There's obviously the two, and I thought they did well. I thought the ground actually converted as well as it could, and actually they had, while they had masses of foul territory up the first and third baselines, they'd actually brought some extra seating in to try and fill that gap. So you've got your normal oval where the football pitch sits. Well, where the diamond was created, they then brought extra seats into the ground to try and close that gap. And then it was a bit weird because behind those seats it was then empty. So, but we were sort of up the third baseline, and I thought it was a good spectacle. And I think beyond the Yankees and Red Sox fans, the most represented beyond them was clearly the Jays, and I think that was really good to see. It was lovely to meet loads of Jays fans and see. I
also thought the tickets were a bit expensive as well for what it was. To be honest, I thought they overpriced it, but they did all right in terms of people who went to it. Attendance was good, but I just thought probably overpriced for what it was.
Certainly the home plate tickets were crazy prices. As I say, we were down the third baseline in the outfield, and I think we paid something like £60 for a ticket, which I suppose is on par with other sporting events. I was pleased to go just to see baseball, in the UK, and definitely MLB have announced this week that they are going to be bringing some more international series games. I think London's earmarked for 3 or 4. I think it is. There's going to be one in Paris. So it'd be interesting to see whether they would bring the Jays. I have a feeling they won't, because I just don't think for the American market it's a big enough sell.
Sexy enough?
No. And I think because we haven't got a natural rival, so certainly the Cubs and Cardinals, who were due to come in 2020, I think they're going to be the first on the list to come over. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Have you ever commentated on any baseball by any chance?
No, I haven't. No. A good friend of mine, Simon Brotherton, you probably know, is a big Chicago fan. He has, and he's covered World Series before for 5 Live. So yes, I know he has, but I haven't. No.
Yeah, no, I like listening to Simon Brotherton. He's one of my favorite commentators, beyond yourself, of course.
Thank you.
That goes without saying. So you haven't done baseball. Is there any event that you would love to do that you haven't done yet?
I've been lucky because I've done 6 summer games Olympics, and I've done 6 winter games Olympics. So I've covered a lot of areas there, and I've pretty much covered most of the sports I'd want to cover. The only thing I've not ever done is a World Cup in football. I've done Euros in football. I've done 2 of those, but I've not done a World Cup in football because it's basically the event that everybody wants to do. So not everybody can do it, obviously. But I think if there's one thing I would like to do, just to kind of complete the checklist, I think it probably would be a World Cup in football.
And I guess, I mean, obviously here we get the stale, the main commentators in terms of the BBC and the ITV networks. But there must be opportunities for British commentators to work for overseas firms. Is that something that you've ever done in terms of bringing a commentary into another nation that perhaps we wouldn't have heard?
Well, like, for example, this year I'm working on the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. I'm working for the host broadcaster. So when you work for the host broadcaster, it basically means those countries who don't send commentators over, you provide the commentary for them. So the Commonwealth's quite big, and it doesn't seem that big, but because people think of Canada and obviously the UK or England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, or Northern Ireland, and countries like that. But actually there's a lot of countries in the Commonwealth who, for financial reasons and for other reasons, won't send a full team or send any team. So what will happen is we supply, and I'm doing swimming and the diving, we supply the commentary, which then goes out in those countries. So so host broadcaster is kind of what it says, really. Is obviously generally for the smaller nations, And for those who may have an interest but just don't have the resources or finances to send, we provide them with a commentary for that.
Yeah, no, excellent. Right, let's talk Jays then.
Yes,
yes, that's what we're here for. So, where did that all kick off for you?
Right, my first visit to Toronto was 1987. I always had a bit of a love for Canada anyway. I don't know why. I think it's because I had quite a few Canadian friends, and I thought I've got to go. So I went to Toronto. So obviously one of the things I had to do on my first visit there was go and see the Blue Jays. 87, Exhibition Stadium, not the Sky Dome. Of course, that came a couple of years later. And I'd seen a bit of baseball, I think, on World of Sport. Very rarely was to remember in those days. We only had three, obviously 82, we had 4 TV channels. So there wasn't much of an outlet for baseball in those days. But I was kind of intrigued. I'm a big cricket fan. And as you know, there are correlations between the two. So I went for my first ever game. And actually, I can't remember who the opposition was. I was trying to go back through the stats the other day to try and find it. But the first game I went to 13 or 14 innings. I can't remember if it was 13 or 14, but it certainly went on for a long time, right? Went way beyond the normal 9. And I was staying with friends in Hamilton. So I had a concern. I was enjoying the game, but I was concerned I was never going to get back because it was an evening game, and I think it was well after midnight by the time it actually finished, and they laid on extra transport for us to get back to Hamilton. So my first real taste of the Blue Jays was at Exhibition Stadium. Obviously not the greatest of locations. There are much better stadia involved in baseball, as I've subsequently found out. But that was my baptism into it. And of course, Jays having won, and I was kind of captivated by that. And it just was the beginning of my love affair, I suppose, which has lasted 35 years. And of course, the Jays celebrating 45 this year. So happy anniversary to the Jays of being 45 now. Where's that time gone?
Actually, on my shelf behind me, I've got virtually every pocket schedule from 77 all the way through. It's just about 4 or 5 years that I haven't managed to collect. I just can't get hold of them. But I was fascinated with people who've been to Exhibition, because my first visit was in 94, so I've only seen Sky Dome baseball. What was that like as an experience? Where were you? Because it was this multi-use stadium.
Yeah.
And from the photos I can remember, there's like one big stand, and then they had some seats around home plate. What was that like?
In that big stand. I was in that big stand. So obviously, not having been to a game before, I didn't know what to expect in terms of where I should sit or anything like that. So I was in the main stand. It was a decent view. It was okay, because obviously I had nothing to compare it to at that stage, and now I have because of my various visits to the Sky Dome. But it was intriguing. Obviously, I didn't know much about it. I was learning as I was going on. I think I was with somebody who was kind of teaching me the ropes a little bit as we were going along. There were a lot of things I wasn't sure about. I was asking questions about. But I really enjoyed it. And sometimes you go to a sport and you just don't buy into it. I've never bought into NFL, for example. I've been to the equivalent games in the UK, and I've never really enjoyed it. And it's one sport that just doesn't do anything for me. But baseball did straight away. So my love affair with it kind of began that day on that first game.
Yeah, and did you get a sense in Toronto, because obviously the Expos was still in existence at that point?
I saw them too.
Oh, very good. And for Toronto, obviously a fairly new team at the point you saw them, so they were just starting, I guess, to walk towards some positive years in the mid '80s. Was there a big appetite? I mean, obviously hockey, Maple Leafs is the big seller in Toronto, particularly. What sense did you get in terms of the appetite for full baseball in that city?
Yeah, I think it was the time when the Jays were just starting to really establish themselves. Because when you're a new franchise, a lot of people look at you thinking, well, A, are they going to last? B, are they going to get kind of swallowed up by somebody else? And I think it was just at the stage of starting to get some big names at that point. Names that most Jays fans will know now. You have George Bells, your Jimmy Keys, people like that, who are legendary now. And that they were lucky that it took them a while just to get that right formula, get the right combination of people. And they suddenly realized they hit upon a formula having some star players. And that's what kind of launched them, obviously, to win AL East. and then to go on to win the 2 World Series. But that was, they were just coming into that vein of form, I suppose, and into those halcyon years when they were starting to look like a real team that had arrived on the scene.
Yeah. Did you get back to the World Series at all? Did you get any
no,
in either of those
sadly
years?
I didn't. No, sadly I didn't. Because as I mentioned, I actually saw Sky Dome being built. First time I was there, I went up the CN Tower and looked down and saw the Sky Dome being built. So I was there from its initial foundations, if you like,
Amazing.
to actually appear. So when I went back the next 2 or 3 years later, it was actually all ready to go. But sadly, I was working away. I was in Sheffield in '93 and '94, so I actually didn't get a chance to go to the World Series, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm hoping that, well, who knows? Maybe this year. I mean, there's certainly a good buzz about stuff this year, and I'm feeling I felt pretty confident last year. I think we were a bit robbed, if we could put it in those terms, about not actually making it through to the latter stages. I mean, it was ultimately one game, wasn't it? It was the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was the most football ending to baseball that I can remember.
Yeah.
In terms of so many teams on the last day, and the sort of the configurations of who might go through. I was going to say go up. That's promotion relegation talk, but who might go through to the postseason, who might not, and if the result goes this way, then it could be this. It was just amazing, wasn't it? That last day of the season.
Yeah, and I thought we had so many ridiculous results last year as well, because I'd look at the scores in the morning and go, what was that? Was it 18-15s and 18-10s? And we get some ridiculously high scores last year. And again, I talk to my baseball friends, and it always seems to come down to pitching. And I know that's obviously a key element for every team, but that was always been my main concern. I go, pitching's inconsistent, which always seems to have been something I've been talking about with the Jays for years. You go back to the Henke days, and it was the same with him. I was never convinced with Henke, even though it's people might say he's one of the Jays legends. I'd always go, I never like it with Henke's pitching. It doesn't quite work for me. And but no, I mean, the AL East is just so difficult. It is such a difficult division. You look at the others and you think, it's the stacked division, isn't it? Yankees,
Absolutely.
us, Boston. It's just ridiculous. You kind of wish they could look at it and just reassign or reappraise the AL East and just make it a little bit more competitive, because for other divisions and us not quite so competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when they got originally put into the AL East, they were a new team, and therefore things probably looked a little bit different. I remember a few years back, I think the Jays had an opportunity to consider going into the Central Division, but they chose not to. And do you think that it's one of those sort of? Would you rather play in a very competitive league and not get through on a regular basis, but you're playing most often against the best teams, and therefore if you're playing against the best teams, that's going to help you improve? Or do you play in a slightly weaker division, get through all the time, but then have the disappointment of actually, well, yes, we've got through, but we're going to get knocked out in the first round, as it were?
Yeah, in a way, I think I'd rather play the best teams at the end of the season, right? So you, as I say, you avoid them. You don't face them as often. You look at our program for April, for example. We've got Yankees straight away. Yankees are straight up, and then we've got Boston in there as well. April is an absolute killer this year for the Blue Jays. Now, you might say, okay, with the roster we've got, it's been improved. It looks good. It looks strong. Maybe we can win both series there. Maybe we can win both head-to-heads. But that's a lot. You got two who are going to be two of the best teams in the whole of every division this year, and we're facing them in April.
Yeah, and I was just looking as you're talking. Yeah, so we've got Texas obviously is the opening series. Then we've got New York for 4 games, Oakland for 3, Boston for 3, Houston for 3, Boston for 4, and then Houston again for 3 at the end of April. So it is just an extraordinarily tough start. But we have a team.
At least we've got a season. That's the important thing. 2 weeks ago, I'm thinking, well, are we even going to get a season? If we do get a season, how truncated is it going to be?
Yeah. I mean, what is your view on the CBA stuff? I mean, it's just, for us, I think here in the UK, it's just such a weird an arrangement? Because I don't think we'd ever see that happening in British sport in the same way.
No, we never have these issues, but American sport has it all the time. NHL has it, MLB's had it, the NFL's had it, and also basketball's had it. All the major divisions, all the major operations in North America have this problem on at least a 5-year basis. It comes round. You always know, all right, well, when's the next crisis coming? It's just kind of the way that North American sport is set up. You don't hear about it. You don't see it anywhere else in the world. It's the unique way that American sport is organized, arranged, which I think sometimes is counterproductive. To be honest.
But I think particularly MLB seems to be the weakest one in terms of its arrangement. Yeah. I think the other three don't seem to be. I know they've all had probably strikes over different periods of time, but it just seems to be that the opportunity for the two sides to be so far apart from each other seems to be heightened in MLB. And I like you, I was thinking we aren't going to see baseball perhaps even until sort of May, June time. That's how I felt listening to what was going on.
Yeah.
It's like a train coming down the track. You know it's coming, but nobody seemed to be worrying about it. And suddenly, oh yeah, okay, we're just going to start cancelling series and so on. I mean, it's just mad. But thankfully,
it's here.
So let's just have a little bit of a chat about where we are. Jays won their first spring training game today, and my apologies that I messaged Bob and arranged tonight, and it's right in the middle. So if anybody's watching game 2, you could ring in and tell us what the score is, because it's happening. I think it's let me look.
It's 2-2 at the moment.
2-2 at the moment in the bottom of the fourth by the looks of it. So that was good timing on my part. So many apologies, Bob.
It's all right.
But so how are you feeling about where the Jays are at?
I'm feeling very optimistic, actually. And not only am I feeling optimistic, I'm looking at what other people are saying. I'm looking at the so-called experts saying, and I'm seeing people saying they think we're going to go a long way into this season. I've even seen a couple of pundits saying we could win the World Series this year. So, I think we've made some good recruitment. We've got some players coming back from injury. I think everything looks pretty good. I don't see too many areas for concern, to be honest, which I might have to reappraise in a couple of weeks' time once the season is underway in April. But at the moment, that was a good win yesterday. Pretty impressive. So I'm feeling unnaturally for me normally, because I tend to work on the old glass half empty rather glass half full way of thinking of things. But actually, at the moment, I'm very confident. I think we're kind of owed one after last year, and I think we could actually go quite a long way this year. Yeah,
and I think obviously we've got an improved squad. Obviously, this week the big news was in terms of Matt Chapman coming across from Oakland. Just is probably reputedly the best third baseman at the moment in the major leagues. Probably not so hot with his bat, but he's not being brought in for his bat. He's been brought in for his defensive capabilities, and it was always that third base corner, which they call hot corner, was the weakness in the current squad in terms of how's that going to look. How excited were you to hear that Chapman was coming our way?
Very. In fact, when it initially came up, I went, I don't think this is going to happen, to be absolutely honest. I thought, real quality player, why would he go for a start? And, are we really in the market for somebody as good as that? I'm thinking, yeah, of course we are. We're a decent team. We've got a lot of credentials. We've got a lot of credibility. So why wouldn't he want to come? They went quiet for a couple of days, and then the story came back up to the top of the agenda again. I'm thinking, good. What we need is quality players. The more quality players we can have, as you say, in areas that we are slightly deficient, even better. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
And I think in terms of starting rotation as well, that is looking very strong. We've got Barrios, Ryu, Gosman, Manoa, and Kikuchi, who's just come in from the Mariners.
Yeah, that's another great signing. That's 36 million
over 3
US
years.
Deal.
Yeah, slightly front loaded, and I think they are, I think, sort of gearing up for a 2 to 3 year window here with these signings. If they don't do it this year, I'm absolutely sure they're going to do it at some point over this 2-3 year window. I think that's the way that Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro seem to be setting up this particular team. But the firepower in the lineup on the bats is just extraordinary. I mean, Vladdy's.
Well, I'm about to say, can he? Can he? I was about to say, can he have another season like he had last year? That's the question. What, second highest in home runs last year?
Yeah.
It seemed to be every time he was in there, he was smoking it out of the park.
Yeah.
So, and as you say, he started pretty well this year. If he can keep that going through the course of this year, he's a very potent person to have. And glad we've got him and other people haven't.
And I think a healthy George Springer, because we had a lot of the season last year without him. And I think, I haven't seen a lot of the spring training news, but it seems like he's in good shape. And actually, a lot of the guys, last week I had the joy of talking to Ben Wagner, the Blue Jays radio announcer, and who is at spring training camp, of course. And I was just saying, the team looking in good shape. Vladdy, again, looks like he's lost a little bit of weight. Espinal is, certainly in some of the photos, there's been a lot of commentary on social media over the last sort of 2 weeks about how well he's looking. And I think that just everybody's hungry, particularly with the break as well and the extended time that they've had off. Everybody just seems right ready to take this on. And I think, we don't want to curse them.
Well,
but
the thing is, I don't remember the neutrals being so positive about us for a long time. Yeah. I'm reading stuff from the general baseball writers and commentators who aren't Jays affiliates by any means, and that they're all really talking us up because they're saying that you're looking for areas where we might be deficient, and they're saying it's quite hard to find that this year. That we've plugged most of those gaps now.
Yeah. Of course, the big thing, as you'll know, watching sports so much as you do, is injuries. It's the thing that we found it last year. Have to manage, isn't it? And if we get a couple of key players, hopefully there's enough depth in the squad to carry us through. That's the hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, Bob. I know it's early days, but are you going to put your flags? What's the phrase? Nail your colours to the flag in terms of, are they going to be World Series champions this year?
Yes.
That positive.
Simple as. I really feel confident about this, and I don't normally feel that way. And you may well be right. It might take a year or two to really get this roster to gel together. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I really don't see too many areas of concern. You're right. The injury thing is something that could derail us or throw us off a little bit. But actually, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I think Chapman addition is massive for us. And Vlad's obviously started in a pretty similar style this year. So, more of last year, but obviously better, please.
Bring it on. And of course, the one thing I didn't say is that they've got an expanded postseason this year as well. Of course, there's 14 teams going through, which means that the opportunity, obviously, to sneak in through the back door is also there. But hopefully,
well, I don't think we're thinking that. We're not.
I know, absolutely.
We're going to win AL East anyway, so why are we worried about that?
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I think for me, the most competitive team out there in the AL for us is still the Rays. They're our nemesis. They're looking strong again. I don't think the Yankees are there. I think Red Sox will probably be down in fourth, and of course, the poor Orioles are propping up the table as usual. But But let's keep positivity, and let's hope we see your wishes come true, sir. That'll be fantastic. Right. So one of the things that we've done with all our guests is to no, I didn't do it with Ben actually last week because he was so tight with time that I didn't get to do with him, but all bar Ben Wagner last week got my little top 10 questions that we just throw out to everybody as we close off. But so who would be your favorite player from last season? Who would you give that to?
I think I'll go Vlad. I think I'll go Vlad Guerrero Jr. Because he always got me on the edge of my seat when he was on. When he was at bat, he always got me on the edge of my seat because I'm never quite sure what I always hoped he would do what I think he could do. But the amount of time that he was hitting the ball out of the park, it had to be him. Obviously, we could go with Semyon as well, but I actually think Vlad wins it for me just on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think yeah, he was the out and out MVP in all senses last year. But there were these guys who were hanging on my wall behind me. There were just so many candidates who played such stellar seasons last year. But yeah, no, totally understand that. Favorite Blue Jays player of all time?
That probably would be Tony Fernandez. I think I'll go Tony because those halcyon days, and also the fact that he came back to us when he'd gone away to come back and do a World Series as well. So I think it's going to be Tony, or it could be Joe Carter, but I think I'll go Fernandez.
Yeah, Joe Carter, of course, famously hit the home run out for the second World Series win. Although and he was the name that I remember when I first went in '94. But a lot of people in that era said, he gets the headlines, if you like, but there were certainly other players that, that were probably slightly ahead of him. But totally get that. You got any favorite non-Blue Jays players that you've admired over the years?
In recent times, I suppose probably Ohtani, because of what he did last year.
Yeah,
again, another. And what I quite like is the fact that Japanese players are starting to come through a bit more now. I mean, they've had such a strong baseball infrastructure for many years, never really quite made it to the big prominent names in the MLB, but they're starting to do that now. So Ohtani, another, again, I don't know whether you're going to ask me that, but a player I'd love to get that we don't have, he would probably be the one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, can you imagine what his price tag would be?
Yes, quite.
Favorite ballpark away from exhibition / Rogers / Sky Dome?
Well,
got any favorites?
I haven't done that many. In fact, I was trying to work out the other day how many I'd done. I did go to the Olympic Stadium where Montreal Expos used to play. It was a bit run down in those days, I've got to be honest. So it wouldn't be that. It's probably going to be Fenway, actually, because even though they are arch rivals, I actually quite like it. It's an old style baseball stadium. It's got a feel of the kind of 1920s, 1930s about it. It was actually quite nice to go to an old halcyon baseball stadium, because obviously most of them, like our own, is quite modern, a bit concrete, if you like, but actually had a bit of a feel about it, and I actually quite enjoyed watching it in that environment.
Yeah, I enjoyed Fenway when we went there, and it's a bit like I guess, in terms of some of our football teams, the ground is sort of shoehorned in amongst houses, and it's a weird shape, isn't it? And that's why they got the green monster to try and sort of equate the shape of the ballpark. It does have a lot of quirks, but it is I
found it very hard to find my way in, actually, because whichever gate I was supposed to be coming into for my ticket, I think I walked around the ground about 3 times to actually find the right location, but eventually got in.
Oh, well done, sir. Well done. Okay, so when you're at a baseball game, what's your go-to grub?
I must admit, I tend to eat before and after. I don't tend to eat much during the course of a game. I think I get too nervous at a game. I think it depends what comes round. It depends, obviously. I've got to say, I always found the fare at Skydome not that great, to be absolutely honest.
Yeah,
you'll get your peanuts come around and your Canadian beer, which I can't stand anyway. So it depends what they're offering. If they came up with something like nachos, perhaps I'd go for that. But I'm not a great eater at a baseball game, so I've got to be honest. I'd say, well, tend to go, and if it's Toronto, I'll go and have something to eat in town, then go to the game or eat after the game.
Yeah.
I always find the stuff they serve at baseball games very unfulfilling, to be honest.
Yeah, it is what it is, but it's classic
and very expensive, of course.
And very expensive. Yeah. Is there a sort of a go-to commentator's snack that you guys sort of sneak in? That
you have to be very careful. No, you have to be very careful. I get the amount of commentators who've have these like peanuts and got stuck in their throat when they're trying to commentate. So I tend to find I don't actually really eat when I commentate. I'll often just wait until the end of that session or whatever. You'll drink, of course, but no, because obviously you don't want things to get lodged in your windpipe or anything when you're in the middle of commentary. It's sometimes give you the Heimlich maneuver halfway through the commentary. It's probably not very good, but
yes, you can imagine. your favorite drink that you'd have with your unhealthy, very expensive food?
Provided I could get a decent beer, I'd probably go for a beer. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Decent. What do you call a decent beer?
well,
Where are you pitching it?
Wouldn't be Molson or Labatt. I've got to tell you that much. There is, yeah, I know you
Bob,
might want
you're
to
letting
try
us
it.
down. We might
You
have
might
to
want
cut
to try it. Well, I'm sorry, yeah, this is not being sponsored by Labatt or Molson, is it? Or is it?
No.
Because if it's too late, I've already done the
It's too
damage.
late, yeah.
But yeah, quite. When I went to Vancouver, they do, but was not at a sports event. They do honey beer, and I developed quite a liking for honey beer. So if there was, if anybody happens to be listening, either at Skydome or somewhere else that I might potentially go to, then I think I could neck a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah, honey beer. We're going to Vancouver this year, so we're hoping to go to see the Canadians.
There's a really good brewery there that does that.
Is there?
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll look that up before we go. Very good. Day or night game?
Day. No, night. What was I saying? Night game. Night game, definitely.
Come on, make your mind up.
That's immediate change, isn't it? Yeah. No, night game, definitely, because kind of a bit like football. I like games under light. Again, I quite like games under the roof as well. I actually like Jay's games under the roof, and I know some people don't.
Is that because it gives the feeling that it's at night?
Yeah, it keeps all the noise in. Keeps all the noise in. So I like games under the roof, but there's something about, and also kind of the way the weather changes a great deal during night time. You'll get in there and you think, oh, it's quite comfortable, and by the time you reach about the seventh inning, you're starting to get cold. The fluctuations and the change you get. In terms of that, I think night game for me every time.
Yeah. So in terms of obviously the Six Nations are on at the moment. So things like Millennium Stadium, would you still be a proponent of that roof being permanently closed, or do you like, going to something like that with the roof open?
And I think it comes down to what the circumstances dictate. I mean, if it's chucking it down with rain, it's going to get like a quagmire, and then you have the advantage. This is why, in a way, I wish Wembley had that. Wembley does not have it. It has kind of the beginnings of a closed roof, but it doesn't actually have a closed roof. It's really, really weird. When you look at the construction of it, I think they built it in such a way they could add a roof to it. Yeah. But obviously, as yet, they've not. But I think there's something quite special about night games. Maybe it's just the way that people are attuned to night games, or maybe the way they approach them in terms of how vocal they are to games like that. But yeah, I think night games for me.
Night games, and there's nothing better actually being at Rogers with the roof open.
Oh, you see it
at night.
Oh, I'm going to walk off now.
Oh, okay. We'll come to that in a minute. We'll come to that in a minute. Let's do that then. Right. So roof open or roof open or roof closed then?
So at the Sky Dome, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry, Sky Dome.
Because you slipped into the vernacular there.
Yeah, I do switch between the two.
I was going to bail out at that stage. Yeah. Well, of course, it depends. If it's a brilliantly hot sunny day, if it's a day game, then obviously I don't want the roof closed. No, but generally, yeah, I do like the atmosphere on the roof.
Yeah, and certainly when you look back over the big games, back in the sort of 2015 Batflip game where they had the roof closed. I mean, people I've spoken to, they said the sound inside the dome was just extraordinary.
Because it doesn't go anywhere; it stays within.
No,
it doesn't evaporate, does it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so it's good to see you in your Jays jersey. So, what's your favourite Jays jersey colour? There we go.
It would be the original one that I saw when I went in '87. I do think our logo and our jerseys are actually the best there are. I think there's something it's been quite classy about it, and I think it's also it stands out from the others. I think there's something quite special about our logo. So whoever designed it, congratulations to them, because I think it's
they did have a bit of they did have a couple of clangers, didn't they, in the sort of 90s, which didn't weren't so great.
They kind of went off beam for a bit, but the one the first one I would have bought, and probably will have bought my original Jays t-shirt, which would have been 87, 88. That logo for me, yes. You putting it there, have you? Probably amongst your collection.
Yeah. So this one was my 94 hat, so that would be the original.
That's a little later,
original logo design, and then it's obviously gone through a few few changes over the years, and
not a massive change. I mean, they're not trying to reinvent the wheel too much, but I quite like the simplicity, I suppose, of the original one. I like. It got a bit more complicated.
And I think those outside of being a fan of the Jays often say that, you know, the logo is one of the best sports logos going, and you can see why. Okay, so the original coloured jersey, you're talking sort of like the baby blue.
Yes.
Colour.
Yes. Forget the red. I do not like the red at all.
Yeah.
I've got a real aversion to the red. I don't know why we have red at all.
Yeah.
When I've seen it on when I've walked around Toronto and I've gone into the sports stores and I've seen the red, I always want to set fire to it. I'm that anti the red, because we're called Blue Jays. The clue is in the name. We're not the Toronto Red Jays. We're the Toronto Blue Jays. Get the old red out of here.
I've got a confession. You
like the red?
No, it's not. I've got a red jersey. It's upstairs.
The only time you'll see me wearing a red jersey is when I'm laid to rest, because I will not ever be seen in a Jays red jersey.
And we've just never played well in the red, have we? I mean, to be honest, it's been...
I'm a surprise. throws us completely off our kilter.
Yeah, no, I get.
Who came up with that idea?
Yeah. Somebody who's into marketing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I know, but it didn't sell well from my point of view, because I'd never buy the thing, never.
Yeah. Okay, that's cleared that one up. So good. On the back of your baby blue jersey, what number would you go for?
I think I might go for the age I'd like to be, 21.
Okay, is apart from that's what the age you want to be, is there any significance in 21 for you, or is it
not particularly? I don't have any particular, but I can see that looking okay. If somebody was to assign me a number, 21 would be.
I'm just off the top of my head trying to rack through my Jay's knowledge of numbers and whether I can think of anybody who's 21 that springs to mind. No, I have to look that up and see whether we've.
So it might be unique. I might even get a turn this year.
You never know.
I might even get a call up. Yeah, might get a call up at 21. Yeah.
Do you know what? If Vladdy gets taken out, Bob, we'll give them your number.
I think I might be all right behind home plate, but that'd be about it.
Yeah. So, did you say you're trying to get over to Toronto at all this year?
Well, I don't see, because I've got quite a few things on this year. I've got the World Touring Championships in Budapest in the summer. I've got the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham later in the year. And I've got a couple of other things because I guess my full-time job is teaching multimedia sport at a university now. Is I actually don't get a lot of spare time. So what I had planned, had I not had these other things, I was going to go over this summer. Right. So it might have to be next summer. So ideally, for a very insular point of view and a very selfish point of view, it'd be quite nice if they could reach the World Series next year. But I'd still rather they won it this year, like they did before. Win back-to-back ones would be great. Do it this year and do it next year.
Of course. I'm sure you could work out some sort of field trip with your students that.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, we actually do have, as part of our offshoot from here, we do actually do stuff in Toronto now. And in fact, I received an email today telling me details of it. So
there you go.
I might be able to swing that. You never know.
Yeah, no, that sounds definitely like a plan. Bob, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate. I know you're super busy with all that you're doing, and to be able to carve out a bit of time just to chat a little bit about all the things you've been involved in, and to certainly hear about your passion for the Jays, it's absolutely been brilliant. So thank you so much. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Good luck, Jays, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, let's go, Jays. Come on. Guys, hope you enjoyed that with Bob. Great to hear a little bit about his career and all that he has done in terms of following the Jays and his passion for this coming year. Please continue to keep liking, subscribing, rating, all that stuff. It really helps just to keep the message out. As always, the podcast will be available on all the main streaming platforms, also on YouTube. So if you haven't found us there, go there. And again, if you click the subscribe button and the little bell, then you'll get notified every time we upload a new video to that channel. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. See you soon. Bye.
The Red, White, and Blue Jays podcast is a production of Blue Jays Fans UK. If you've got a Blue Jays story to share, let us know. Email us at bluejaysfansuk@gmail.com. And follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Jays Fans UK. I'm your announcer, Jim Langton. Thanks for listening.